I am 73 years old, and 3 weeks before my granddaughter's wedding, my own daughter called to tell me my walker would ruin the aisle photos. She said it would be easier if I simply did not attend. She said Haley agreed. I did not argue. I did not cry. I made a cup of tea, the same chamomile I have made every afternoon for 40 years, and I watched the steam rise above the rim of the cup my late husband gave me. Then I picked up the phone. Not to beg, not to plead. I had one small thing left that nobody in my family remembered I owned. My name is Dorothy. I am 73 years old, and for 46 years I owned a small flower shop on Maple Street, 3 blocks from the church where I was baptized. I sold the shop when my knees gave out, and I have been a quiet woman ever since. I live alone in a house with yellow curtains my husband Walter hung the summer before he died. I water 2 African violets on the kitchen sill. I make chamomile tea at 3 in the afternoon. That is most of my life now, and I do not complain about it. I have 1 daughter, Susan, and 1 granddaughter, Haley. Susan was the kind of child who corrected her teachers. Haley was the kind of child who fell asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. I loved them both, but I will admit I loved them differently. I think most grandmothers do, and we are not supposed to say so out loud. When Haley got engaged last spring, Susan came to my kitchen with a folder. She had printed photographs of venues, dresses, and centerpieces. She sat across from me at the table and said the bride deserved a real day. She said it twice, the way she says things when she wants me to agree before I have finished listening. I poured her coffee. I asked how much a real day cost. The number she gave me was $41,000. I did not flinch. I had saved that money over 40 years, 1 bouquet at a time, 1 funeral arrangement at a time, 1 prom corsage at a time. Walter and I had planned to spend it on a trip to Ireland. Walter died before we booked the tickets. The money had been sitting in the bank ever since, doing nothing but waiting. I told Susan I would pay. She hugged me. She actually hugged me, which she had not done since her father's funeral. She smelled like the same drugstore perfume she has worn since she was 19, something with lily of the valley in it. I remember thinking in that small kitchen moment that maybe things between us were finally softening. That was the first mistake I made. I want to be honest. I did not write a check and walk away. I am a woman who once ran a small business, and old habits do not retire when you do. I called the venue myself. I called the caterer myself. I called the florist, a woman I had known for 30 years, and I called the string quartet. Every contract was in my name. Every deposit came off my card. Every cancellation clause was written exactly the way I wanted it, because I had been burned once in 1978 by a wedding party that backed out on a Saturday morning, and I never forgot the feeling of standing in a cold shop with 200 roses and no buyer. Susan never asked who signed the paperwork. She assumed I had handed over the money the way grandmothers in movies hand over money. She assumed wrong. I did not hide it from her. I simply did not announce it. There is a difference. The months passed quietly. Haley came over twice, once to show me her dress on a phone screen, once to ask if I still had Walter's pearl earrings, the ones he gave me on our 10th anniversary. I said yes. I gave them to her in a small velvet box. She kissed my cheek and said they were perfect. She smelled like that same lily of the valley perfume now, the one her mother wore. I did not say anything about that. I just folded the tissue paper back into the drawer. 3 weeks before the wedding, the phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. I was folding a load of towels. I remember because one of the towels was the blue one Walter used to dry the dog with, and the dog has been gone 11 years, but I still keep the towel. Susan's voice was light. Too light. She said she needed to talk about something delicate. She told me the photographer had concerns about the aisle. She said the aisle was narrow. She said my walker would be in every frame. She said it would be easier, just easier, if I watched the ceremony from home and joined the reception by video. She used the word easier 4 times. I counted. I did not mean to count. I just did. Then she said Haley agreed. That was the sentence that landed somewhere under my ribs and stayed there. Haley agreed. My Haley, who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms, had agreed that my walker would ruin her photos. I did not argue. I want you to understand that. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry on the phone. I said, "I understand, Susan." I said, "Thank you for telling me." I hung up the phone, and I finished folding the towels. I folded the blue one last. I set the stack on the bed in the spare room. Then I went to the kitchen and made my chamomile tea. I sat at the table for a long time. The steam rose above the rim of the cup Walter gave me, the one with the small chip on the handle from the day he dropped it in the sink and laughed about it for an hour. I thought about Ireland. I thought about the trip we never took. I thought about how $41,000 had felt like a gift I was giving the future, and how the future had just told me I was an embarrassment in aisle photos. I did not cry. I want to say that again, because I think people expect me to cry in this part of the story. I did not. I felt something colder than crying. I felt the way I used to feel in the shop when a customer tried to return wilted flowers and tell me it was my fault. Quiet. Steady. Done. I picked up the phone. I called the venue first. I told the manager, a kind young man named Thomas, that I needed to withdraw my payment authorization. He paused. He asked if everything was all right. I told him everything was fine. I told him to refer all remaining balance questions to my daughter Susan, and I gave him her number. He said he understood. He sounded like he understood more than he was saying. I called the caterer. I called the florist, my old friend, who did not ask a single question, only said, "Dorothy, are you sure?" And I said yes, and she said, "All right, sweetheart," and that was the end of it. I called the string quartet last. The woman who answered laughed gently and said, "Well, this is a first." I told her it was a first for me too. I did not cancel anything out of spite. I want that to be clear. I simply stopped paying. The vendors still had contracts. The vendors still had a wedding to deliver. They just had to deliver it to whoever was willing to pay the balance. That whoever was no longer me. I made a second cup of tea. I watered the African violets. I sat in Walter's chair by the window and watched the light move across the floor until it was gone. I do not know exactly what happened in the days that followed. Susan did not call me. Haley did not call me. I heard pieces later from my sister, from a woman at church, from the florist who could not help herself. The venue called Susan on a Wednesday. The caterer called on a Thursday. The string quartet, I am told, called on a Friday morning, and Susan was in the grocery store, and she dropped a carton of eggs in the dairy aisle. I do not know if that part is true. I like to think it is, and I am not proud of that. The wedding still happened. I want you to know that too. I did not destroy it. They moved it to my sister-in-law's backyard. There were folding chairs from a church basement. There was a cake from a grocery store, the kind with the plastic flowers on top. Haley wore the pearl earrings Walter gave me. I saw the photographs later, on a cousin's phone. She looked beautiful. She always does. Nobody called me that weekend. Not on the day of the wedding. Not the day after. I made my chamomile tea on Saturday afternoon, and I made it again on Sunday, and I folded a load of towels on Monday. The blue one was still on top of the stack in the spare room. I had not moved it. In October, a letter arrived. Haley's handwriting on the envelope, the same loopy handwriting she had in 4th grade when she wrote me thank you notes for birthday money. The letter was 4 pages long. She apologized. She said her mother had told her things that were not true. She said she should have called me herself. She said the pearl earrings were the only thing about the day that felt like me. I read the letter twice. I made a cup of chamomile tea. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Susan had sat with her folder of venues, and I read it a 3rd time. Then I folded the letter back into its envelope, and I put it in the drawer in the spare room, the one I do not open often. The blue towel was still in there too. I closed the drawer. I did not write back. I'm not sure why. I think I was waiting to feel something clear, something I could put into words on a page, and the clear feeling never came. What came instead was a kind of quiet. Not peace, not anger, just quiet, the way the shop used to feel at 6 in the morning before I unlocked the front door. I am 73 years old. I water 2 African violets. I make chamomile tea at 3 in the afternoon. The cup Walter gave me still has the small chip on the handle. Sometimes, when I am folding laundry, I think about Ireland. I think about the trip we never took. I think about $41,000 and a narrow aisle and a granddaughter who used to fall asleep on my chest during thunderstorms. And then I finish folding the towels and I put them away and I do not open the drawer.